All right, so my name is April Wolf. I'm with the City of Reno. I'm the recreation therapist, and this is our monthly spinal cord injury lunch and learn series, coming to you digitally right now. So thank you for joining us. This is brought to you by a number of different partners. So the Spinal Cord Injury Lunch and Learn is a partnership with the High Fives Foundation, as well as Renown Rehab and the VA Nevada healthcare system. And each month we bring a topic-based speaker to you. So for this month's speaker, I'm excited to introduce Jason Abraham and Jeff Andrews of the High Fives wheelchair rugby team. They are sponsored by High Fives Foundation and play here locally. Just a few housekeeping things before we get started. So this session is being recorded and will be posted to the City of Reno website as well as our adaptive Facebook page. We're going to turn on the closed caption for anyone that might need it. You can use the chat function during the presentation if you have any questions, and I'll be monitoring that through the presentation. And then obviously at the end, we can unmute and ask questions that you may have for the speakers. So we just ask that you leave your camera on mute or your microphones to avoid any background noise. And with that, I'm going to start with a quick video that introduces the sport of wheelchair rugby, and then I will turn it over to Jason and Jeff to talk about their experience in playing. So I'm going to switch to a video real quick. All right.
Invented in 1977 and originally called Murder Ball, wheelchair rugby made its Paralympic debut in Sydney in 2000. The sport is played by mixed teams of men and women. Players score goals by carrying a round ball across the opposition's goal line with at least two wheels of their wheelchair on the ground. The field of play is a hardwood court measuring 28 metres by 15 metres. There's an 8-metre goal line at each end, marked by codes. Teams consist of 12 players, with 4 allowed on the court at any one time. Players all have impairments affecting their arms and legs, and are classified using a point system measuring functional physical ability. Each individual is scored from 0.5 up to 3.5. The lower the number, the greater the activity limitation. The 4 players on the court cannot exceed a total of 8 points. For each female player on the court, an additional half point is allowed. Defensive positions are usually played by low-point players, whilst attacking players often have higher points. They can be distinguished easily by their wheelchairs. Offensive wheelchairs are shorter, with small bumpers and rounded wings, so they can turn and manoeuvre through tight spaces. Defensive wheelchairs are longer and have a wide bumper in front, designed to strike and hold opposing wheelchairs. Games consist of 4 8-minute quarters. If the game is tied at the end of regulation play, 3-minute overtime periods are played. Teams have 12 seconds to move the ball from their court into the opposition's half, and 40 seconds to score a goal, or they must hand over possession. The player in possession must bounce or pass the ball within 10 seconds of receiving it. To pass the ball, players may throw it, roll it, bat it, or bounce it. Kicking the ball is not permitted. This is a full contact sport, and clashes between wheelchairs are very much a part of the game. Hitting and blocking is used by both defensive and offensive teams to stop the ball carrier or to create openings for a goal. However, dangerous contact, such as hitting a player from behind, is generally not permitted. Wheelchair rugby is a fast and furious contact sport that makes for spectacular viewing.
All right. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jason and Jeff. As I mentioned in the video, kind of overviewing the sport, there is offensive and defensive players. So Jason actually happens to be an offensive player and Jeff a defensive player. So I guess we'll start with Jason.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name's Jason. I was injured 5 years ago, and I'm a C6 quadriplegic. And I was introduced to the sport of quad rugby during my time at Craig Hospital, where I did my inpatient rehab after my injury. And so, yeah, they introduced me to the sport, and you know, got a little bit of it under my belt there, and then when I got back to, I live up in Tahoe, and when I got back here, I was introduced to Todd in April, and yeah, Todd kind of sort of recruited me and told me about the sport, and it's been awesome. It really has helped with so many things in my life since being injured, and you know, just being able to interact with other people with similar injuries and travel and be athletic again. Before I got injured, I was really into sports, and so quad rugby is a real sport, and it takes a lot. We train a lot. We work hard. We practice twice a week in Reno, and we travel mostly on the West Coast with our team. We've been a development team up until about this year, where we actually had a great season. We brought in a guy, a high pointer from Australia named Matt Lewis, who's probably one of the top 5 players in the world, and Jeff and I, and we also play with. We've combined with a bunch of the Sacramento team, and so Jeff and I have been working hard, and we've come a long way, and yeah, it's been really something that's become a special part of my life, and for anyone that's a new injury that's looking to get back in sports, I highly recommend it, and there's so many benefits to it outside of it just being a sport. There's you learn a lot from the people that you're around and traveling, and it really helps with gaining your independence back, and yeah.
Jeff, do you want to introduce yourself, and then we can kind of open up to specific questions about the sport? Jeff has he has to find the unmute first. So hover the bottom, and then there you go. Perfect.
Hold on. Get my fine stand set back up here. Oh, there we go. Hello, I'm Jeff Andrews. I'm part of the wheelchair rugby team as well. I am a C5-6 quadriplegic. 1.0 is my class for rugby. Been playing for about 5 years now. A little more serious now. My first couple years, I was doing rehab over in Hawaii, so I wasn't around for the season as much. But I've been playing pretty consistently for the last 3 years, and it has helped me so much with all of my just getting more active and being more physically fit. It really helps with everything in your day-to-day life when you're playing rugby and in better shape. And I really love the competitiveness of rugby and getting out there and competing against everybody, and being really nice to all the referees during the games is really my strong suit.
No.
Especially April.
Oh, we're losing your signal. There we go.
And rugby just really, it's a great community to be a part of. Got introduced to Todd in April, pretty much right when I got back into town, when I moved back to Truckee. And then just everybody else on the team and everybody else in the area. It has really helped with getting me back active and social and just going again. And we got some new players up and coming. So it's when we get back to it here, it should be fun.
Jason, would you like to explain kind of some of the basic rules? I know Jeff mentioned his classification, and so if you can explain kind of how players are classed and how that looks as far as what you can have on the court for some people that might not be familiar with the sport.
Yeah, so each team is allowed to have 4 players on the court at a time. and your classifications run from a 0 to a 3.5. 0 is less zero, like the lower end of the scale is less function and more of a defensive sort of blocking player. And your higher end 3-5 player is a higher functioning player with, usually an offensive player, ball carrier. And I am a 2.0, so I'm sort of right in the middle. Jeff's a 1, a big 1, so he's more of a defensive blocking player. Your total, so with the 4 players, your total can only add up to 8 as, between each player. If you add everyone up, you can only have 8 points on the floor at one time. That's kind of how the point system works.
Maybe some of the basic rules for some that may not be familiar, either Jeff or Jason, if you want to explain them.
Jeff, you can start if you want, or I can keep going.
So the basic rules are each side can have 8 points on the court at a time, and the goals are on opposite ends of the basketball court. And I believe they're 28 feet wide. I'm probably wrong on that, but I just took a shot in the dark. And so you got to dribble or pass the ball every 10 seconds. And there's a key out in front of the goal, and you can't stay in the key for more than 10 seconds, or it's a penalty or a turnover. And you need to roll through the goal with the ball in your lap for it to be a goal. You have to have 2 wheels cross and touch on the other end of the goal line. If you make contact with the other player's body, it is a penalty, and you go to the penalty box for a minute or until the other team scores. What else am I forgetting here?
Backcourt.
Oh, yeah. Once you cross half court, you cannot go back across half court. You have to cross half court within 12 seconds after inbounding, and you have to inbound the ball within 10 seconds. And
8-minute quarters, right?
Yep.
4 8-minute quarters.
And so, I don't know, Jeff and Jason kind of hinted that I also officiate wheelchair rugby. So as an official for the sport, it has kind of rules. The sport was created in Canada and has kind of rules of basketball and soccer and hockey kind of all meshed into one. So it has rules like backcourt violation, and there's a lot of, if you are a wheelchair rugby official, there is a lot of counting, as they brought up, where you're counting, 10 seconds before they dribble or 12 seconds before they go across half. So sometimes you're counting, simultaneously different things during an active game. So it is a cool sport to be a part on, but definitely a lot of rules to learn. So Jason, do you want to add anything?
Not too much, but yeah, it like what you were touching on there at the end. It's one, if you do decide to get in the game, it's a process. It's easy to want to be good and learn it quickly, but it becomes a new sport, something that you've never done before. So it does take time to start to understand it and get good at it. And I think both Jeff and I have come a long way, but we're definitely still learning, the ins and outs of the game, and it takes a while, but it's really gratifying as you get better and learn the rules and become a smarter player.
Can either of you guys touch on the equipment, access to equipment, not just the chair itself, but some of the other things that you use to play the sport, so that folks know how to get started?
Yeah, I can touch base on this. We practice over at Evelyn Mount Community Center, and we store our wheelchair rugby chairs there. We have some extra chairs because of the city of Reno and old players who have donated their chairs back, and we are extremely lucky to have that facility. And so we have the wheelchair rugby chairs there, and then everybody wears arm sleeves and gloves with rubber sewn on the palms, and some people use rubber sewn on the backs to help you push, and some sticky clister to help us grip because we don't have a whole lot of hand function, or any for some of us. And so, yeah, luckily we have those extra chairs and some extra equipment there. So when we do get back up and running and practicing again, anybody who's new can come on by to our practices. We haven't set up times for this year or days quite yet, but when we do figure all that out, it'd be great to have any new people out.
Jason, is there any other equipment you use that you want to mention?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing Jeff forgot is we use a waist belt. So you know, a lot of us don't have any core function. So we tend to put it's sort of like a workout belt that we wrap around the chairs. It sort of keeps us from falling over in our chairs when we're pushing or throwing or catching the ball. And the ball we use is you know, it's a quad rugby ball, but it's very similar to a volleyball. And yeah, other than that, I think that Jeff touched on most of the equipment. I think that they touched in the video. There's two types of chairs. There's more of a high pointer chair, which is a little smaller. Then there's the defensive low pointer chair, which it's like a picker. They call it a picker. It's on the front, and it just extends out from the front of your chair. So it gives a low pointer a little more leverage, and it enables them to kind of lock up other chairs and gain a little extra distance between themselves and you know, the other player.
So I would say probably the most exciting portion of the sport is the full contact piece. So I was able to find a video just of hits. So I will share that, and then probably just turn it over to any questions. So I'm going to share this biggest hits video. My
Pizza
oh no!
or salad?
1 second.
Which one do you think I'm having for dinner tonight?
Skip that. There we go. Right. So some of those hits are legal and some were not. So I think they mentioned in the kind of video explaining the sport is, so yes, it is full contact, but anything that is usually behind the axle, so the midpoint of the wheel back, would be considered an illegal hit. It's usually typically pretty dangerous because you can spin and then smack your head on the gym floor. So that's not encouraged and usually penalized quite heavily during a game, especially if it ever happens and occurs right at the goal line when a player is about to score. There's really no point in hitting them that way. It's really unsafe. So do you guys have anything else you want to add before we open up to questions?
Yeah, you know, for some people the hitting part's great. For other people, maybe not. But I wouldn't let it discourage you. Even if you get hit and you fall on the ground, it's not a. I've never had an experience where it's a painful deal. It's usually pretty mellow. You just kind of stay on the ground and wait for someone to help pick you up. And you know, I wouldn't let the hit. Some people are really excited about the hitting, and some people maybe not. But don't let it discourage you if it's not something that you're into. But.
And if you're straight out of rehab, we won't hit you. Yeah, John agrees. Jeff, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just low pointers. You can't really have an illegal hit if you're a low pointer, so that's a nice.
You do no wrong, right?
I've never done anything wrong on the rugby court.
Ever.
Ever.
So with that, I'm going to open it up to if anybody has questions for either Jeff or Jason, you can take yourself off mute and feel free to ask away.
I got something. So I know it's exciting for potential some of our patients to come and try rugby. What would you say, maybe April, you can touch on this, what would you say to the significant others after seeing a video like that, or trying to get them excited to get them participating?
Tell their significant other to go shopping and drop off their participant to this practice. So I don't know. So sometimes it's the best thing to come to practice and to be around. Like Jeff and Jason said, they learned the most about not just about rugby, about what am I going to drive now that I got hurt, or how am I going to transfer in and out of my wheelchair, or how am I going to travel by myself. So I think it's much more than sport, and sometimes it's just best to maybe take a moment away from that caregiver and get around a bunch of other folks that are in a similar boat and have figured it out. And I think that is more valuable. You know, it's not about just about the sport. It's definitely about learning to become more independent. And I think the sport, you know, my husband, when he first got injured, was in a power chair and never thought he was going to play a wheelchair sport. And he showed up to practice in his power chair, and the team was like, "Oh no!" You know, picked him up out of his power chair, threw him in a rugby chair. Because you're playing on a wood floor and the wheels are cambered, it's a lot easier to push the chair. So you might not think you have a lot of upper body strength, but it's totally different than if you're sitting in a sports chair. And then just being able to gain that strength, you know, pushing a chair at practice. Do either of you guys have anything you want to add?
I mean, yeah, I'm married, and I think my wife loves when I go to rugby practice. And yeah, like April was saying, like you know, the function that you have when you're first injured can change quite a bit, and the rugby aspect of it helps build strength and independence, and it's just a really great way to kind of start your path towards independence and setting goals, and yeah.
I think Jen had a question, unless Jeff has anything else to add.
No, I'm single, so I don't have any different.
I'm just curious to know, like, what kind of conditioning you guys do, and is it a seasonal sport? So is there like an off season and on season?
Yeah, so the season goes from early August until the end of March. But it is, some people take the off season off, but it's usually best to push your chair around, even in the off season, just to stay in a little bit of shape. And I prefer pushing my rugby chair around versus pushing an everyday chair around if I'm using it for exercise, just because you're in a better seated position to push. And so I just prefer pushing in my rugby chair compared to pushing in my everyday chair. And then when the season is going and we're pushing and playing a lot, we do a lot of conditioning, a lot of pushing. We have 3-hour, 2-3-hour practices a week in Reno. And then there's 2 or 1 practice a week in Sacramento if we want to go. So we could pretty much be pushing for 9 hours of practice a week plus pushing outside of practice. So it's pretty time consuming. Definitely, if you want to be good at the sport, you got to be able to push your chair. And so yeah, conditioning is a huge part of the sport.
And then Jason right now actually is at the High Fives Foundation and the Sierra Johnson Healing Center. And so a lot of these guys, in addition to playing the sport, are either working out in the gym or doing other things to kind of stay in shape for the sport. And then, like Jeff said, like the chairs are very different than your everyday chair. So an everyday chair typically is a more flatter seating, and the rugby chairs have a lot of dump in them, and they put you kind of dumped into the chair, and it's a lot more stable. And so like Jeff said, it's a lot easier to push that chair around because you're way more stable in that chair versus in your everyday chair where you might be fighting your trunk, if you're going off camber and stuff like that. Any other questions? I want to see some patients ask some questions, not just their therapist. Or they have to figure out how to unmute.
I will check in with both of them after and see if they have anything, and I'll text you.
Awesome.
But
All
feel
right.
free, if the 2 people that have iPads in their rooms, if you want to chime in the chat section that I showed you about, you can do that as well. Just no video.
All right, so if either of you don't have any other questions, I just want to thank you for taking the time to join us for our virtual spinal cord injury lunch and learn. If there's any future topics that you would be interested in us covering, feel free to drop those in the chat as well, and we will find a topic-based speaker to join us next month. And with that, I would like to thank everybody for attending.
Thank you, April.
Take care.